Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the If Then podcast. This is your host, Debo Ray, and today we are joined by Jesal Gadhia, the head of engineering of Thoughtful AI. So, Jesal, it's awesome to have you with us today. Welcome to the show.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you.
uh, Generally, on this podcast, we like to start with a little icebreaker. What's the most memorable meal that you have had in your recent memory, and what made it memorable?
Yeah, that's a great question. Recent memory, I'll go with that ate dinner I actually had with my team at Basel, and we were in Geelong for the leadership offsite, and this was the restaurant. I think it's called Bird's Nest. Yeah, it was kind of like literally like a bird's nest. We were up in the skyline in the jungle of Geelong, and it was like a small round table, and we could see the entire jungle from that skyline, and we were like the highest building for like miles that I could see. And yeah, so the view was incredible. You could see the ocean, and we were there for a couple of hours, so I could actually see the sunset going down from that vantage point. And it was kind of interesting, like the later service have to like come up from the bottom like, 3 floors out. So they're like coming up and down. And I was just thinking all of the service that we were getting after like my vantage point, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is
I need an invite to the next one of these, man. This sounds incredible.
yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
But no, thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. So maybe with that, Giselle, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got where you are today?
Yeah, so I've been in tech and writing code for as long as I can remember. Ever since like I was 10 or 11, I was in programming and then building software, just for fun as a hobby. And fast forward, I graduated in computer science, worked in for a bunch of consulting firms, and then back around 2009, I was working for a company, but it went out of business because of the financial crisis. And I was like, okay, what do I want to do next? And the opportunity hit me to start my own company. At the CTO of that company said, "Hey, you want to like join forces and like we could start a consulting firm. We could probably do this better." So we got incredibly lucky with that opportunity. Well, on day one, we were working with customers like Google and Panasonic and bunch of large enterprise customers, and it was a wild ride. Did that for about 5 years. Grew the company to about 12% team. We had an office in Los Angeles here. But to that ride, we were working with a lot of solo founders who had just raised seed capital and we're trying to find market fit. So did a bunch of 0 to 1 journeys, and that was like the most exciting part of it. And I was like, oh my gosh, I really enjoy this start journey. So I started a company right off the back with that. It was a mentorship platform connecting college students with industry professionals. Did that for a couple of years. Didn't quite pan out as I'd expected. So I took a step back from entrepreneurship and I was like, okay, I think I want to go back as an IC and join a kind of a VC funded startup. So I joined that tech company. There we were kind of trying to scale creative education with doing like AI-based training and proctoring. So learned a lot there. Eventually ended up leading the team as the director of engineering in that company. And then after about a 5 year run there, I joined BetterUp. And BetterUp was like I think 150% company at that point when I joined, and then we were just straight to the so I came as an IC, helped them build out a ton of stuff on the platform side, the product side. And then they were just on a hyper growth trajectory. So eventually, I think we ended up becoming a team of like 750, 800 at the highest point. And the engineering team group about 100 engineers globally distributed. So I moved again back into leadership roles. My last one there was to kind of bring the entire product to the government sector and get FedRAMP certification, which only about 300 companies in the world have. So that was another challenging ride. Um, but yes, from there we went on to Thoughtful AI and actually worked with the co-founder of Thoughtful at better. So from back then, and I was like, yeah, let's do this. This is the incredible time to actually dive into like healthcare, especially with AI. There's a lot of opportunity to use that. So yeah.
That's awesome. Could you tell us a little bit more about Thoughtful AI and what problem you're working on solving?
Yeah, so Thoughtful is specifically focusing on revenue cycle in healthcare. And for folks that don't know what revenue cycle is, it's essentially everything that happens in the back office from the moment a patient walks in to a provider's clinic and to the moment they get paid. So there's a bunch of different steps that happen, and it's all about managing very complex U.S. healthcare system bureaucracy. So we go in and we say, okay, you know what? Don't worry about all this stuff. Like you guys focus on patient care, and we will take care of the getting you paid.
That's super cool. So I know, Giselle, when we were preparing for our recording today, you had mentioned that your team, the way you're structuring stuff, it's taking a developer marketplace model. And to me, this sounded pretty unique. I'd love to learn a little bit more about what this means. Are teams organized by their business functions? Is it by the stack of the engineering, like the overall engineering operations that your team exposes? How does it work?
Yeah. So let me take you a little bit, take a step back and kind of tell you a bit more about how Thoughtful actually approaches delivering solutions. So what we do is when we get across that the customer, we look at their operation from like the people, the process, and technology lens. So we go in and we look at, okay, how many people do you have working in your revenue cycle function? What is the actual process from the patient intake to you getting paid? How many steps are there involved? And what is the technology that is powering that process? How many systems are you interacting with, the EHR systems and then whatnot? Then we look at the outcomes, like what is kind of like your cycle time to get paid? What is the error rate in terms of the over your claim submission? How many claims are you successfully submitting? How much time is it taking to like onboard people in your revenue cycle function? How complex it is? And then we kind of look at all of that and say, okay, I think we can bring our healthcare expertise and kind of optimize that flow. So, for example, if a customer is interacting, let's just say very simple, like three systems. They're going in system A, doing a bunch of like training clicks to get some data out, and they're putting that in system B, doing some analysis, and they're kind of taking it into system C. We can look at that and say, oh, wait, we actually have a SDK that will interact with system A and directly take it to system B. There's no need to do all this, say, transposing and a bunch of like clicks and all that kind of stuff. So when we go into the customer and we can do that, that's like our customer engineers are involved in that. So we have an entire kind of customer engineering side of the operation in our team that understands healthcare, understands the healthcare best practices, but also understands engineering, and also understands like what our SDK is capable of. So these software engineers, they partner with our developer marketplace and say, hey, this customer has a tree system process, but we can actually do it using our SDK, interacting with component the library A and library B. Why don't we develop a solution that way? So they come in and they just kind of use our SDK and our APIs and our infrastructure to build that out and ship that to the customer. And then once it ships, we kind of monitor it. We look at how well it's doing, what the error rate is. We fix any edge cases, and then it kind of goes out in steady state and maintenance state. So that's generally how we structure it. And the SDKs and the APIs, the infrastructure is kind of all stuff that we build internally, and that's something that my team is in charge of.
This is super cool. And I can, as you are diving deeper into this, I can see how like structuring the engineering team in this way makes a lot of sense for the business that you're in now. How is this different from how you were doing things at Better?
Yeah, BetterUp and thoughtful have some interesting parallels in terms of BetterUp and thoughtful both try to empower humans. And then BetterUp was kind of focused on mental fitness, how do you get better at your job through coaching. And thoughtful is like, hey, we can take all the grunt work out of all the administration and all that kind of stuff that you're doing and empower you to be creative and focus on your patients. So those are two parallels, but the way thoughtful kind of goes about it is you're more tied to kind of the ROI and we're almost like a financial product. We looked at the entire kind of financial pipeline revenue cycle and we can say, hey, we can actually compress this down by automating huge chunks of it. So in that way, I think the ROI story it is a lot easier to make because it's just a numbers game. It's harder to do that a little bit on the human behavioral change side of things and better up. So
Yeah. Since you mentioned the ROI, Giselle, I think one step further from that, it's usually then it becomes a question of prioritization and then demonstrating ROIs for different years, right? Even as businesses, we try to demonstrate an ROI to our end customers very similarly. An engineering team or even every engineer within that team has to demonstrate their ROI within the business. And we need this even internally, be it for advocating for new headcount, for a new tool, etc., etc. How do you think about like using in all of our businesses, we have a limited amount of time. We also have a limited amount of money that we can spend on a certain problem. How do you go about rationalizing that?
yeah, I think one thing that we've done at Thoughtful was simply that there was to map everything back up to the company mission. So we have the mission that's evergreen, then you kind of go click down and you create OKRs for your business. Like what are the business objectives for the quarter? Down there, that one click below the OKRs, you start to think about like what are the initiatives that you can do that can move the needle on those OKRs. So once you kind of have that clear thread, that goes from the initiatives that you're working on to the OKRs to the business and the mission of the company, then you can start to look at individual kind of proposals or individual initiatives and kind of start to measure what proposal initiatives going to have the biggest impact to move the needle. So having that framework, I think, is super valuable, and also that's the reason I think we spent a lot of time on that, like crafting the OKRs, bringing the team together, making sure that they are aligned on the broader business strategy and objective. Because after that point, we can kind of let the team be creative, and they can come up with like unique solutions and things that are pretty tightly aligned with the overall objectives.
It's really cool. And that's also like one of the ways in which we try to do engineering at DevZero. Like, obviously, we're in a slightly different space where the software we build is primarily our users, our engineers, and engineering teams as well. But it's great to hear you describe it in this way. So, okay, we have an engineering team to try to make sure all of our objectives are all tied back to the company's main set of goals and the company's overall mission. Do you, after this step, once the engineering execution starts, that's where creativity, innovation, etc., starts to happen. Because every engineer in their own way is their own artist as well. As the head of engineering, do you have some ways of measuring the organization to make sure that things are going on the right track and when to intervene or interject?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I like is to measure cycle time of the initiatives to see how fast are we kind of delivering value to our customers. I like to keep the cycle time as tight as possible and create concentric loops around what we build. So how soon can we get value out the door and then we can iterate on that product. So then that kind of, if you go down a little level deeper on that, I think like looking at your pull request cycle time, how fast developers are getting feedback from their peers, how fast are they able to ship, that like greatly impacts the overall feature of velocity and cycle time. The other thing is like I'm just a fan of kind of keeping so technical choices simple. So simple technical architecture is kind of what allows you to move as quickly as
Yeah.
possible. And in general, like no code is the best code. So if we can like not write some code, not build some system, then let's do that because that's gonna help us in the long run. We don't have to maintain something that's super complex, right? So,
One of the things you had mentioned in the past was essentially there are the engineering set of metrics, and then as the head of engineering, you're also responsible for shipping the product that goes and then solves customer problems. And you had a general framework around complexity, value, and the impact that it would ultimately have. Could you talk a little bit about that?
yeah, so I think yeah, so when we look at our customers, we think about what is the kind of like I said earlier, like what's the scope that they're dealing with? What's the value that they're generating? What's the complexity of their pipeline? And then another piece around that is like what's the impact? What's the cost? The bandwidth, their rate, and the cycle time how soon they're getting paid. So those are like the customer facing metrics, and then we kind of have to um, list the coin and kind of say, okay, what metrics are we measure that came to those customer metrics? So one metric internally that we look at is how soon can we deliver a solution, design and deliver a solution end to end. So we try to make sure that that entire time is under 90 days. So now the thing that I look at is like, how can I empower our customer engineering team? How can I empower our developer marketplace to move faster and deliver a solution within that time frame? So you kind of think of ourselves like a Formula One pit crew. So we have our SDKs, we have our capabilities, and we have our like design spec of what we want to deliver to our customers. How fast can we bring all that together collaboratively as one team and then get that car running on the racetrack? So there's tons of things that you can do in that arena once you kind of look at it that way.
It's really interesting. So ultimately, the team, like the customer facing engineering team that you have, they ultimately end up becoming your main customers because that's the interface between the customer and all the products that you end up with. It's super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Who are the people on the team that look at these metrics?
So our leadership looks at those
I see.
metrics. Our engineering team looks at those metrics. I think it's the entire company that has stated there. The sooner that we can deliver these solutions, there are margins are as a business. So we will make sure that we're not getting bogged down in months long implementation cycles. So whatever we build from an engineering perspective is going to be our toward that. How can we enable our developers to move faster? How can the solutions that we build, the modules that we build run faster? It's not about just the design phase, the development phase, but actually once it's actually built, how can that thing run faster and run the most optimally on our infrastructure? So speed is kind of like the thing we focus on end to end.
Interesting. And so I'm assuming you're looking at these metrics on a very, very regular basis. At that point in time, what sort of a time window do you consider before realizing that, okay, this is an area that we need to invest in more, or this area needs some changes?
I think like there's you can kind of look at um from customer to customer, but then also you kind of look at it from an aggregate level, seeing how are you trending in terms of your implementation time, in terms of your value delivery pipeline. So I think there's a lot of lessons from just like looking at it from one delivery to another. Each delivery is different. Each delivery has its unique kind of set of challenges. So you definitely want to like allow lessons from them, those, and kind of see, is there anything that we could do better? Is there a system that we could build? Is there any like unique capabilities that we can introduce? So then also overall, like looking at all our deliveries, looking at our entire accurate cycle time and try to see like, is there something that we could do here? Like, is there an opportunity to think differently and lead how like parts of our process or do something completely creative? So yeah, kind of look at it at that micro level, but also macro level, and try to like think from all perspectives.
This is very interesting to like get a sentiment on how you're thinking about just projects going from the design phase to it being implemented and just serving end users. On the infrastructure side of the house, do you also think about similar things?
Yeah. So we had this the developer facing CLI, and we input CLI has two commands. One is to create the module, and another one is to publish. So, and once they publish it, it just gets orchestrated on the infrastructure. The developer doesn't have to worry about like where it's running, how it's running, how it's set up. So from the infrastructure perspective, I feel like it should be super frictionless for the engineer to come in and shift something. And then on my team is kind of in charge of like, okay, how well is it kind of run on the infrastructure? Like, what can we do to optimize the things that the developers are shipping on the back end? And that's something that I'm thinking about a lot and trying to build things into our SDK and to our API capabilities to make sure that we can ship things that is kind of infrastructure agnostic, but also at the same time tailored for the right job and the right compute at the right time. So everything doesn't need to run on a EC2 instance. Everything doesn't need to run on a Lambda function, but they use separately developers have the freedom to choose like what is it that they're trying to do and where should it run based on the job that they're trying to do.
Super interesting. I think this ties in pretty well to another topic I wanted to dive into. So, Thoughtful at its core is a pretty early stage company, but it still seems like you're thinking about developer experience at the core, because at the end of the day, these are the people that are building the products that will ultimately get shipped, and you're letting them own the end-to-end decision making for the most part. How do you measure if the developer experience is working well or?
Yeah, I think this is still a evolving area for me. So we were starting with the basics. Our developers able to do things that they want to do without the tooling and the infrastructure getting in their way. So, for example, we had this CLI that I talked about. Starting with the basics there, like what is the success rate of that CLI? Are those demands 100% successful all the time? And then secondary, what is the speed of those capabilities in the CLI? Just like trying to get into the mindset of like, let's get out of the way of the engineers and let them be creative and productive, but at the same time, that creates some natural structures and guardrails or how we want them to operate in our ecosystem.
That's really cool. You had mentioned just switching tracks a little bit to go from the day-to-day engineering aspects to the more engineering operation side of the house. You'd mentioned that BetterUp had a pretty distributed team. How are things over at Thoughtfully?
Yeah, we're also pretty distributed engineering team, working across the globe. We're always a much less smaller team, but let's say that we're both first principles.
There's one thing that I find myself battling over a lot as well. So I'd love your perspectives on how you think about, like you mentioned, the leadership event that you all had organized, so everyone gets to get together. So there's some value in the in-personness of an early stage team. So I'm wondering how you rationalize the differences between a globally distributed team and having a local team, or are there some sort of time zone overlaps, etc., that you try to ensure?
Yeah. So, first of all, yeah, I think it's super important to meet in person. That's some cadence to kind of build that cohesiveness and that personal connection. So we try to organize quarterly offsites so for the entire team that can come together and spend time together. And this is also the time where we kind of the craft for OKRs, and we also like you find kind of hackathon or something like that that allows the team to like learn from each other. Secondly, in terms of time zone, yeah, we try to overlap time zones or working hours, right, regardless of the distributed model. Because yeah, otherwise it's super hard to collaborate, especially if your team is like based in Europe and or in US, like the working hour overlap is like almost inexistent, right? So that's super important to have like some overlap there.
For sharing that. So the audience for this podcast of ours, right? It's usually engineering leaders of pretty high performing edge teams. In a team like yours, anything you would like to share around how you're maintaining culture throughout the engineering group?
One thing that I am a huge fan of is the communication. So especially in a remote team, that becomes super important. Making sure that you have a very well organized wiki where there's some run well some of for situations that you encounter. There's also a structured onboarding for new engineers coming on board, so they're not like blocked by some other engineer at different time zone, and they're like, okay, I need to like wait 24 hours to get my question answered. And also that goes to also leadership, like having clear OKRs, clear company objectives written down, and also having metrics that measure against those OKRs. So I publish like a weekly or a monthly newsletter that says like how we're tracking as a team and how all our KPIs are tracking. I was just creating a lot of like, written transparency that can be consumed. I think it's super important.
This is really cool. Yeah, because one of the things that I also find that works pretty well, at least for our company, is having an incredible amount of transparency within the team. Just because most of us engineers or anyone that joins an early stage company, we are here to do good work. And the transparency just helps tie each of our work back to the overall company's goals. So that's really cool to hear. So I think this is all the time we had allocated for today. I wanted to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch, and I'm sure I'll also keep getting to learn from how you're running your engineering teams. Thank you so much, Jesal.
Likewise, thanks for having me. This was super fun.